We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
It's a question of taste with you, well, if you've gone sour, you want the world plus everything, but you won't work an hour. And now your questions are get creeping and you're going buying flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy, I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. So shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters, the professionals with me, Steve Wraith, Stu Penman and Mitch. How are you, lads?
Very good, Nick.
Good to see you. As always, 90 minutes. Look back over yesterday's game and taking in the topics that you want to discuss on the platform tonight. Mitch, 3-0 win against Wolves. Before we start, I just want to let you know that for the next 3 months, I'm going to now predict Newcastle are going to get beaten every game. So starting with the weekend, on Monday, I think we say we'll get beat off Chelsea 5-0. I think we'll then go to Manchester City, lose 6-0. You get the picture. But yeah, great result. Happy days. Lifted a bit of doom and gloom. It was certainly, as I was walking up to the ground yesterday and you know, pre-match around the town, there was just a touch of nervousness, and that hasn't been apparent for a while now at St James's Park.
There was a little bit of positivity missing out here in Dubai as well. Not quite the same buzz pre-match as we normally get. I think people were concerned about, what we were going to see. And I think we didn't just get the result that we needed. I think we got a performance that we needed as well. I think not just to come away with a 3-0 win, but with we'll look better in every possible metric you could ask for. Light years difference from the game against Blackburn, and not an easy opponent. It wasn't that was a gimme of 3 points. That was something we genuinely had to work hard for, and I think the performance as well as the result was really what we needed, and it's come at just the right time.
Stu?
It was back to basics, wasn't it? It seemed like they had a reset. The press returned, not his best version, but it returned. It was there. It was 4 months to the day since we last beat 11 players at St James's Park. A much-needed confidence booster of a clean sheet as well, which I think is very important for the team. What I was interested in watching yesterday, because once Dan Burn got named in the team, it was as if people were waiting for him to make a mistake to say, "I told you so." And that's not how we should be supporting the team. We should be hoping that he has a blinder. So after my first pint, I thought, right, I'll start making some notes. In 15 minutes, the first dissenter started because their right winger had the audacity, Neto had the audacity to actually have a run at him. Can you imagine that, a forward player running at a fullback? And but then how it flipped, 18 minutes, 3 minutes later, Byrne had a rousing applause from the fans after his lung burst and run forward, and then he had a shot. 3 minutes after that, he got himself in a good defensive position to block a pullback, a cutback. And I thought, you know, nobody, he could score 5 goals and clear 10 off the line, and there'll still be people thinking, oh, well, it's a one-off. The fact is the formation was changed because we had legs in midfield. And instead of people who were going to get the ball and pass it sideways, it allowed Bruno to get a bit further forward, take a bit more risk. Willock breaking the lines with pace, with running with the ball that extra 20, 30 yards. It made the whole difference. And if I just go through the goals, Isaac's goal, to me, it was a great striker's awareness. He is as if he anticipated the keeper was going to save it. And he made the finish look easy, which it wasn't. The second one, I was speaking to the Heat this afternoon. I said, I'll tell you what, we wouldn't have scored that second goal if Miggy was playing instead of Murphy, because the ball was whipped in with his right foot. And that would have been stopped, pulled back, or knocked sideways. So they got the tactics, I thought, spot on. And the third goal, and it was the Heat that said that to me. He says, if Trippier was playing, would Trippier have scored that? Or would he have got the ball, knocked it sideways, or knocked it down the line? But Livramento had the awareness and the confidence to plough forward and took it away. So, yeah, to me, there can't be any complaints. I thought Bruno was outstanding. He dictated the play, but that was helped with Willock around him, Longstaff putting the shift in. And the forwards, I thought, how much graft did Isaac doing that, especially in that first half when they were doing the press? He was side to side, back there, chasing back. He did the job of 2 men in that first 45 minutes. I thought he was really, really good. And it's not hard when the ground will be that heavy, because it was pouring down by all accounts, as I could see. Gordon, I thought he looked better. He was especially when he's allowed to break, because we know how quick he is. Instead of being given the ball in a stationary position, he was allowed to run onto the ball, and I thought that made a big difference to his performance. And then that led me to another question: is will Southgate pick him for the Euros? And you've got to think, like, on form, he's streets ahead of Rashford, even though he scored a snorter the day. That he was anonymous for the rest of the game. And Grealish, they're the two competitors for that place in the squad. And I honestly think Gordon is miles ahead of them. But if Southgate's true to form, he's more likely to go with what he knows than someone like Anthony Gordon. So if he doesn't want him, I was also speaking to John Carver today, and I'm sure him and Steve Clarke would quite happily welcome him with open arms to the Scotland camp. So I reckon Gordon will be at the Euros one way or the other. I just thought I'd throw that in at the end because Hearts beat Celtic today as well. And I haven't mentioned the rugby from last week either, so I've been very good.
Yeah, you're getting it all in today. Yeah, Rangers
get it all in at once.
Rangers getting beat yesterday, of course, opened the door for Celtic, and the as usual didn't walk through it. So yeah, interesting stuff. Lots of comments coming in about the match. Let's go through a few of these. John said, in my opinion, the key to yesterday was playing 4 in midfield. Meant we were a bit deeper. All the goals were from deep on the break and wouldn't have happened with a 4-3-3. Do you agree, Mitch?
I think what you saw was what he was trying to do to get Bruno further up the pitch a couple of weeks ago, and we're effectively a back 4 out of possession and a back 3 in possession. But I was impressed with the way that we used the break. All 3 goals effectively came from breaks. We could have had a 4th with that ridiculous no-look pass from Bruno over the top of Miggy, which was just sensational, by the way, and isn't being talked about enough. I was very impressed with how we used the break. Willock's return and his mobility and his ability to get into the box and to join up with attacking movements, but also work back. And we were talking about how what had exposed Byrne was this missing that access of Willock and Joe Linton in front of him, and you get half of it back, and all of a sudden the whole thing looks different again. Really impressive effort from Willock, given how long he's been out. He was unlucky not to get a goal himself as well. I think the defender that got his toe on the end of it to take it off the line after he did that little diving header. Again, Willock deserved a lot more out of the game, but it just shows how key he's been. some players get better the longer they're out the side, like Joe Linton is at the minute, and Willock was one of them to those two. And I think we saw why yesterday. I thought his contribution was superb.
What's your thoughts on the formation, Stu? Another question there. Somebody asked, do you think this is the formation that we'll see for the rest of the season there? Stephen Coxon, with this new system with slightly deeper defence be used for the rest of the season, we look much better playing as a part press and a part counter-attacking team with our pace.
To be honest, I don't think they played a deeper defence. I thought the midfield closed the gap between defence and midfield, and that limited the space because there was too much over the last few months playing between the lines. But that's when you've got, well, I say this the greatest respect, plotters in midfield rather than people with the ability to turn quick and stuff like that. They were too easy to play through. So by narrowing that gap, it made it more difficult. And then we played to our strengths by hitting them on the pace. And when we got them into their third of the pitch, we could then press and start dictating play. So we were comfortable for them to have the ball. For me, it was quite similar to the season when Howe first came over, the last half of the season. When we were near the bottom and then we end up staying up quite comfortably, where we started dispatching a lot of teams who would give us a lot of trouble recently. And you don't want to put all the credit on Joe Willock, but he made a huge difference. The fact that we've got a runner there, and just that takes other people away, which give Bruno the space. You could see it all unfolding, but adding on with like I said earlier, the clean sheet, the manner of the victory yesterday, it ended up being quite comfortable. And you're sitting there thinking, right, we've just beat them 3-0. Now, don't think it's an easy game against Wolves, because in recent weeks they've won away at Chelsea, they've won away at Tottenham. And after the Blackburn game, I don't think many Newcastle fans could be forgiven, for thinking we're going to get beat here. I mean, someone predicted on this panel that we would get beat. They made the game easier than what it was, or what a lot of people anticipated it to be. And I think you've got to give credit to Eddie Howe and credit to the players for listening to the tweaks that were made to the system and for carrying them out in what was horrendous weather. And you could see the belief was there. And now that belief will only grow because it felt like they were getting the mojo back. And it was very, very happy times for Newcastle fans after 5 o'clock, wasn't it?
Yep, definitely was. Few other comments. John says, I think Willock was good yesterday and nice to see him back. Isaac got 11 Premier League goals, 15, of course, in all competitions. And Gordon should be on the plane for the Euros, says John. T-Tanks says, Dubravka was man of the match because the 2 saves made sure that we won the game. It was certainly a comprehensive performance from Dubravka yesterday. And Gary says, Howe's tactics was spot on. Pressing when we needed to. Midfielders, we've already mentioned, close at the defence when they needed to. Let them have the ball and we'll run at your back line. Well done. And SJP, Dave, after we went 2 up, there was a spell it looked like they could come back. So I was pleased we started playing again. Yeah, and I mean, that was all down to substitutions. The substitutions are always important in a game. I mean, I've got to be honest, when Eddie Howe made the 3 together, I groaned. I was like, do we really need to make these? But then as I was looking through the team, I'm thinking, okay, well, yeah, he's probably tired. He's just come back. He probably needs to go off. So, Eddie got it right yesterday. We won by 3-0, and there's nothing else can be said. Unfortunately, where I sit, we have a rotation sometimes of people sitting behind us. You might remember last week's the last home game. I had somebody who walked out in front of us when Newcastle went a goal down against Bournemouth. This week I had a guy sitting behind us who just constantly slagged Dan Burn off for the whole game. So it gave me no sense of joy every time Dan Burn got something right. Just made the guy look stupid all the way through the game. But yeah, I mean, my view of the game, I enjoyed it to a degree. Wasn't the best game of the season. But the fact that we got 3 goals, we kept a clean sheet, and one or two of the results have gone our way this weekend. It just keeps us in the mix. It keeps us. We've certainly got something to play for in the league, and that's important. Keeps the season alive. David says, felt like a big win yesterday, a clean sheet, etc. A European place is there with good end of the season. What an achievement that would be for Eddie and the lads, given the injuries we've had. And George says, Elliot Anderson will be our hero this season. It's written in the stars. A Wembley superstar. Yeah, optimistic, mate. And that system is perfect. You're right, Stephen. Yeah, I've already covered that one. So, go on, mate.
All 3 goals came with decent passes to utilise the one thing that when we've got everybody fit, we have in spades, which is pace. And that pace really was. You look at all 3 goals. The breakaway, then the run through from Bruno, who busted a gut to get up, and then Isaac took the finish superbly well. The second goal, again, with people pressing on, I think the point about Murphy hitting it first time is really important. That when you can whip a ball in like that, you cause chaos. And the defender had it covered, and for some reason the keeper decided he was going to get involved, and they cocked it up between them, and the ball was on a plate for Gordon. And then the third goal, the Leazes end just about sucked it in. Once it sort of rattled around off of Livramento's other foot. But he worked hard to earn that. He's worked hard, and every time he's put an appearance in. And what this tells me, that's where Livramento comes into his own. He gives with that other option to Trippier at right fullback, and it takes the pressure off Trippier in a season where we've been riddled with injuries. We know we've got good cover in certain positions. And I know the injuries point's been belaboured, but you've just talked about making 3 substitutions at once and bringing players on who could change the pace of the game. And we've been denied that for a lot of the season.
Absolutely.
When you look at the numbers, the time missed, and that time missed numbers is just for injury. Once you add Tonali's suspension on top of that, the time missed, we're way ahead of every other team in the league. Not just a small amount ahead, we're way ahead of every other team in the league for injuries now. Have they had to reassess the system a little bit, and are they worried that the system that they've been playing is part of the root cause of that? Don't know. But whatever they changed yesterday worked, and it was good to see that, and long may it continue.
Yeah, I think the system they played yesterday is one that he wants to play all the time. But you got the nail right on the head there, Mitch. I put a tweet out before the game feeling really positive because we had strength and depth on the bench. For the first time in a long time, it was a strong bench. And the way they played, they'll make the changes, especially to the white players who have to do a lot of running to cover back and get forward. But I think summarising the game yesterday, the team to a man, they battled and they grafted and they earned the right to win that game. And for me, it was like it was similar to that Leeds away game in Howe's first campaign. The 1-0 that we won. It was like a sliding doors moment where the belief is there now. Like they've got over it and think, right now, what can we achieve? And some of the results went our way, and we've now got games against the teams around us coming up, like the Chelseas, West Hams, who else is up there? Everyone around us, we've got games to Man United away, we've got coming up. So how we finish the season's in our own hands, and we're not relying on other teams now. So maybe the Champions League places might be out of reach, but then you take into consideration Tottenham haven't, but Aston Villa have still got European aspirations and games to play. We haven't. And Man United, by all accounts, by the time we play them, they might have a new manager in situ. I'd love it to be Graham Potter, because then that would open another can of worms regarding Mr. Ashworth and his meeting with him. So keep it on for Newcastle at the moment. It was a fantastic, well-deserved victory and no complaints whatsoever. And I want to mention Dubravka because he had I heard that he had the Eartha kits. That's why he missed out on the game at Arsenal. But he came back with a match-winning performance on Tuesday night and a clean sheet yesterday. And he couldn't have kept a clean sheet the week before, could he? If he had the runs. So fair play to him. And again, he's another one that's coming for certain criticism. and it just shows you how much confidence, even for top professionals, how much confidence is a huge factor in football. And he didn't look like he was going to get beat yesterday, and he started coming out and claiming the ball, which is something he's been accused of not doing in the past.
Yep. Mark Ritchie says, I thought when we signed Tino, he'd be a player who could play further up the pitch. He's not only cover for Dan Burn and Trippier, he's so intelligent on the ball. Get him up the pitch. Yeah, it was great, wasn't it, to see him get that goal yesterday? And you know, as you listen to him on television, and as you watch him on the pitch, very mature young lad for his age, Mitch.
Absolutely, and has a really good attitude. Constantly, you know, they've kept him involved enough that he's obviously not disheartened. He knows he's going to get his chances, and he makes Eddie's time difficult every time he does get a chance to see how he had bus droppers, and that's what you want for a young player like that. You want someone to come in and say, "Well, you know what? I'm in the team now. You've got to drop me," and so. I think we've phased him in very, very well, and we're going to benefit probably for the next 3 or 4 seasons out of that.
Yeah, wise head on young shoulders, Stu.
Yes, I think if you look at it, when we signed him, from his perspective, I would imagine he was sold on the idea is if things go well, we'll be playing 55 plus games this season, and Trippier's not going to play all of them, so you're going to get about 15 games at least, starting games for the club. But what you will have is the opportunity to learn from one of the best right backs in Europe. And I think because he's an intelligent footballer, he's very aware on the ball and he uses both feet. He's composed. He doesn't panic. I think he would have. Well, he obviously did jump at the chance because he signed for us and he wanted to come and sign for Newcastle. So to further his own career, he's looked at Trippier and he can learn from him and improve his own game from that. And I'm sure they have been spending a lot of time together and he has been observing them and taking tips. And he looks like the type that would listen, where you get some people who start their career as well, think they know it all. And he looks like he wants to get better. And as Mitch said there, his attitude is spot on. So the big decision will come at the start of next season when he'll probably feel he's done enough to be in the starting lineup. And will he get the call over Trippier? That's again why Eddie Howe gets the big bucks. But what a nice position to be in.
Spot on, Mitch says, Alan, if we get top 6, it'll be a fantastic achievement. And for Howe and backroom staff, a pat on the back and keep the doubters off his back for now. Simon says, ref can blow for full-time whistle when the ball's in the air from a goal kick. I don't think it matters where the ball is. Just having a chat in the chat. George, I hope he was watching and apologises on the radio next time he's on, says Ian. Not sure what that's about. And Sank says, as Livramento comes in and changes right-hand side, better and attacking options is plus with him. It'll be exact same if Eddie Howe give minutes to Lewis Hall, but he's not. The Lewis Hall thing's still ongoing. David said, Tino said learning from Trips was one reason for signing, and Tino is going to be world's best. Go on, Stu.
Just a spot of speculation from a source within sources, shall we say.
Yeah.
Lewis Hall and Eddie Howe have had words. Now, when I say the words, it wasn't an argument, but it appears that Hall wants to return down south and he's a bit homesick, which is something that we alluded to a few months back. And it may be that he'll get his wish, and that's why he's not playing as much now, because there must be something in the contract on minutes played. And he's there in case of emergencies. That's what I heard about 2 hours ago. So whether that's correct or not, I don't know, but that's what I was told, and it does seem to.
That does, but I heard something a little different, based on if he plays less than 37.5% of the games, he can be classed that he's available for. He can be classed as an academy signing, and therefore it's different with regards to FFP.
Oh, very good.
I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't had time to dig into that because I've been running around like a blue ass fly most of the weekend, but that's the kind of, it was the very specific 37.5. I'm thinking that's not a number you kind of pull out the air, you know. So I need to do a bit more digging on that about what the rules are in terms of FFP whether it be classed as an academy signing, because I think that would remove 25 million out of FFP immediately.
Okay, Stephen says on Tonali, seeing as you've mentioned him, the Premier League are allegedly investigating him regarding any betting that has happened since he's been at Newcastle. Will he be sanctioned further? Got to be honest, I'd heard a rumour about that a few weeks back, Stephen, but it was a rumour, and as you say, it's an allegation. I'm not sure there's any truth in that at all, to be honest, and it's not something we've discussed, is it, lads?
Oh, we covered it last week.
Yeah, but I don't remember anything concrete. There's nothing concrete out there. No,
if there was to be something, it would be retrospective and time served anyway.
Yeah.
And I think it could be just the usual mischief makers just trying to unsettle Newcastle as much as they can.
Yeah. And I think we've seen so much of that. You know, we discussed this on the Amigos about, and we've discussed it on the WhatsApp groups a couple of times. That there's so much bizarre information bouncing around. At one point this week, it felt almost like takeover time. You know, you're like trying to think, that's weird. Where's that come from? And so I think we have to be careful about things like that doing the rounds.
Yeah.
Which I think if he was going to get punished by the FA, the FA would have had to made a statement well before now. They wouldn't have waited.
You would think so.
6 months and say, oh, well, we'll look at this now. You know, it would have been at that time, especially when his case in Italy was being played, and say, oh, well, we've also got a case to make as well. You finish that, and then we'll start conducting ours. So, to me, I don't think it's at all.
You would have thought by this stage it would have been made a little bit more public.
Yeah, no, you definitely would have. Slight change of tack then. Edward, good evening. Says, based on the attitude of Middle East people, is the way the Premier League keeps moving the goalposts more likely to make the Saudis determined to become top dogs or walk away? Good question, Mitch.
As far as I understand, they're in it to win it, and they're in it for the long term, and they're in it to make their team, our team, the best they can be. I would say that I would see people trying to scramble to move the goalposts partly as a compliment and partly as a challenge, and a challenge that they'll face head on rather than try and do what Man City did, which was, you know, allegedly with their various charges, they doped the financial side to improve their timeline. And there's no way we've done that, no way we've been able to do that because of what's gone on in the more recent past with Man City in particular. And like we've always said, is they want to come through the front door with the head held high, not sneak around any back door and find loopholes and in their, what we've seen in their eyes, cheat. They not want to do that. Reputationally, that's not what they want to put on the table. And I see and hear nothing that says they're no less committed at the minute. Frustrated, yes, I think that would be, I think that's fair. I think they'd have to be bloody saints to not be frustrated by the most obvious ways that people have tried to obfuscate and get in the way of progress for Newcastle United. I do think we'll see a little bit of a reset this summer. We haven't found out what came out of the meeting up in Alec yet. A lot of that's still, you know, gone under the radar almost, really. Understanding that there was some quite important individuals at that meeting. And therefore, I think we'll see some sort of reset on and off the pitch in some way, shape or form, but all in a good way. I can't see Piff wanting out. If PIF do buy another football project, it'll be an entirely different football project with an entirely different budget and not in any way, shape or form linked to Newcastle United other than the fact that it's the PIF football project. And that's what the other thing people are getting their knickers in the twist now. Roma has been bandied around the same way AC Milan and Inter Milan. And a lot of that is desperation on Italian football's part because they're desperate for investment. The same way French football is desperate for investment, and that's where you saw, you know, the Marseille fans getting excited about an alleged link to Saudi, which has sort of been on off for the last 10 years anyway. So I think for me, all the ever want to do is to win, and to win the right way, and to be seen to have dealt with everything the right way, and to have done everything properly and by the book and above board. And that's the way they'll want to do it and continue to do it, as far as I'm concerned.
You agree, Stu?
Absolutely. There's the original question was, would they walk away and become more determined? I'm strongly of the mindset they'll become more determined. If you look at what they've done in other sports, where they just, if someone says it's impossible, they'll make it a challenge. If someone says you can't, they'll say we can. And look now, all the top boxing bouts will be in Saudi. They've revolutionised golf because they were told they couldn't do it when they first started tinkering with it. And it won't be, for me, it's only a matter of time before something happens big with Newcastle. There's so many ways around it they could do it. I think it was last week we discussed how come other clubs have hundreds of millions of pounds worth of debt yet still be able to spend more than us, because that suits them. But it's to stop, like the Crystal Palace, that text that, didn't he? He had a pop this week. And I know I mentioned last week about the Nottingham Forest owner. He can afford to put his own money in, so why should he be restricted doing it? It's now affecting more people that the tide will turn, and I think they're waiting for it to go organically, where the rest of the league decides, you know what, this needs to be changed. And if not, what's to stop them lending the club money and creating a debt and giving easy repayment terms? There's so much way around it. There's extra sponsorships we've talked many times over, but my opinion is, regarding the PIF and sports, they want representation at the very top level, and they say the Premier League is the top level in club football. They've already all but have the 2034 World Cup announced, and then you'll see a spectacle with stadiums and how it's done. And I think that'll be the first time this new 48 team format will be played in one country instead of like 3 continents or whatever it is next time round. They've got the Saudi Pro League, which we've all seen them, and I don't like the term throw money at, but they've allowed a lot of money to be spent at it, and they've done it right, because if they sit and wait for that to take its course, it could take decades rather than or even generations to get to where they want to be, and they're in a hurry. They've got a lot of money to spend, and they want to make Saudi renowned around the world for many good things. And before people start screaming sports washing, the whole intention of it is they know the oil is not going to be there forever. And by 2030, they want more than half the country's GDP to be not oil related. And that's why you're seeing a big push on tourism. There's so much, if you're living in this region, I don't want to bore people back home who don't, there's so much push on Saudi tourism, Saudi business, but they don't waste a lot of money. They spend a lot of money, but they won't waste a lot of money, if that makes sense. So I don't see them walking away from this at all, because that would look like they allowed themselves to get beat, and they're anything but defeatist. So I can see them saying, right, let's see what happens. But I'm quite certain we'll have a huge transfer kitty this summer. And if it comes to it and if things need to be challenged, they'll do it. Just ask the PGA and golf.
Lots of people asking about the ground, lads. So that'll be the next topic. Go on, Mitch. You finish up on that first.
They'll have looked at what Dubai's done. And what Dubai did in Vision 2020, what they're talking about doing with Vision 2030 is along similar lines. Dubai now aren't oil dependent on their GDP. It's tourism, it's Emirates Airways, it's all the other things that you
over with you. It's me when I'm over drinking with you.
Exactly, aye. And so when you look at how they've done it, and then add to that, see us get a bit of shellacking in the Emirates, surrounded by Dubai adverts and Dubai sponsorship, they'll have looked at that and they'll be pissed at that. And they'll be saying, "Well, that's not going to happen again. We want to do better than that." But the country as a whole is on a trajectory which is very, very different to what traditionally Saudi was. They're very much the blueprint as to look at what Dubai's been. And I think, you've had your first, the diplomat alcohol shops have opened up in Saudi now. Something I think 10 years ago would be absolutely and totally haram, and totally unheard of. And now that's, you see, there's the chink to put the idea into the psyche of the people. The next thing would probably be you can have wine with a dinner in a 5-star hotel, and then it'll go from there. Because they also know, yes, Islamic tourism there's still a lot of money in that, but to actually break into the world tourism, unfortunately, they've got to bend on things like having alcohol in bars, because that's the only way you'll break into world tourism. And so I think they all know that. They know the trajectory that the country's on. You're going to see changes there, the kind of which I've seen here over the last 10 years. We're coming up to Ramadan soon, and Ramadan in Dubai, really, for a tourist, doesn't exist now. You're not running into bathrooms with a sandwich to try and have your dinner and hide from the world. It works as normal, or as pretty close to normal as possible. And that's taken a slightly change for the country as well, not just for business and not just for what's going on. And that's what we're seeing Saudi are looking to do, and you bet they'll be in for 2030 for the World Cup, and I think they'll do a bloody good job of it.
Okay, we've got about 10 minutes before we go to the ads, so let's talk the stadium. Lots of questions coming in about that. Ian says, is expanding the St James's the equivalent of papering over the cracks? Shouldn't we be looking to make a statement and building the very best stadium in the world? Mad Mark said, Luke Edwards this week reported the feasibility study for the stadium expansion is close to conclusion and suggests the boardroom sources would prefer to expand St James's Park over building a brand new stadium. Other points made in the chat. Daniel says, seriously, what would you prefer? Stadium upgraded to 65k max or move to Leazes Park for a brand new stadium, which would house 75 to 80 potentially. Dave just simply says, question with the three of you. Do you want a new ground? Mark Ritchie says, over 500 watching. I wonder how many got the survey and favoured moving St James's Park. I think it's the only way we can close the gap and still do it legitimately. Did you three fill in the survey? And Mark also said, as PIF bought Newcastle to make money, do you believe they would accept the possibility of limiting the club's growth by staying put, or will they buy land in the city to create the best stadium in the UK? Plenty food for thought there. I did fill in the survey. I would prefer to stay at St James's Park if possible. I would be happy to move to Leazes Park if the NIMBYs don't get in the way, which they did last time. Would I move further afield? It would be a hard thing to do that. It really would be, because of everything we've always listed on this show, and everybody else knows, it's in the city centre. It's a big thing. It would affect the bars and the restaurants. It's unique in the way that it's set, and a lot of people love it for that, even visiting supporters. So it would be tough. The owners would really have to, provide a solid reason as to why it was the case, and the new stadium would have to be somewhere, which I guess was, a sensible suggestion. But I still think building on the existing stadium is where they'll go. I don't think we could fill a 75,000, 80,000 seater stadium at the moment. Maybe for some games, for concerts, yeah, but for a game, week in, week out, especially the atmosphere over the last couple of weeks when people have been down because we've got 2 draws at home. If everyone's a season ticket holder, people are going to be there. But I think a gradual improvement on St James's Park and then a possible move to Leazes Park would be more satisfactory for me. That's my answer, Mitch.
It obviously is a question I've bounced around for a hell of a long time, with various stuff that me and Steve Hasty have been involved with over time, and different people. We know what the conclusions of certain people who were interested in buying the club were years ago, that they saw moving to a new site as an inevitability. Whereas I think the current owners as a group understand the special history of St James's Park and being central in the city. Because let's be honest, it really is the heartbeat of the city in many different ways, and almost quite literally. It's a really difficult one because when the well-discussed problems with expansion of St James's and questions about how quickly could we do it, what would interim capacities be, what effect on the capacity for 2 years while building was happening would be, where do we play games on occasion, do we have a situation where we get dispensation to play the first month of the season all away from home, things like that, or stuff that have got to be on people's lips when they look at what they're doing. It's my belief the way they're doing the engagement and fan engagement, etc., that they already know what they want to do and everything's lip service at the minute anyway. I think the feasibility study and the consultations, I think, are window dressing.
It was done ages ago, the feasibility study.
Exactly. And so I think we'll look at these things. If we genuinely want to match the bigger investments or the bigger size of income that you get at match day, say like Arsenal, for example, at £1 million a match day, I think you genuinely need a built for purpose, multifunctional stadium, which also has F&B, which also has potentially a mall and accommodation and houses linked to it. Something that is 24/7, 365, not just every other weekend for 38 weeks of the year. I think we need something that is state of the art now and will still be state of the art in 10 years. The problem we've got to decide, and you touched on it, mate, is how big. I think we could fill 80,000, but probably only for about 4 or 5 games a year. After that, and you look at what's happened in Italy, I think the key, the key one to look at Juventus and their move to the Alliance Stadium. They expanded and expanded in the Delle Alpi in the 80s and 90s when it was good for Italian football to get up to sort of 90,000 capacity, and yet when they've built a new ground, 42. And the reason they've gone for that is they were sick of seeing the ground half empty in Coppa Italia and dead rubber games in Europe. And some league games, they were still only getting 40 to 45,000 in a 80, 90,000 capacity ground. And it looked, as it sounds, half empty. And so is it worth having a ground that we can fill for 4 or 5 games a season, or do I want something that's constantly full all the time, that we know we can, like at the minute, which so 50 odd, do we take it up to say 60, 65? Something we could fill more of it on a regular basis. We certainly don't want a situation that lot down the road have, whereby, you know, you've seen what that ground looks like, even when they're saying there's 40,000 in it, you can still read the bloody words on the seats, for God's sakes. And so, you know, that's not, and this year I'm having a bit of a dig at local rivals, but at the end of the day, it's not a good look. It's not a good look for them. It was even worse of a look when they dropped down to League One and they had to close an entire tier. You know, and that's not a situation we want to be in with a ground. It's all very well and good having a sparkling new 80,000 seater, but if there's only 50,000 in there, that's 30,000 empty seats, and that's a lot. That's a lot. And so I think we'll have to balance that very, very carefully about where we want to be on demand for tickets. Yes, we certainly have capacity to increase. So it might be that expanding St James's to say 65 would be the ideal compromise, but then we've got to decide how we do it and what process we'll go through while we're developing the ground. How can we use the ground while we're in development? How long is that going to take? My suggestion would be to having spoken at length with John Henry, the architect who did those drawings for us, about coming up with solutions like turning the pitch 90 degrees or moving it 80 yards diagonally and what you could do with it. He's still saying 2 years. So, you know, if there is the ability to have a plot of land or use Leazes Park and build something new in there and then do something with St James's after, that would be fantastic. I think that would be the best of both worlds. But I totally understand why BMA just turned around and said, no, I want to do something with St James's Park. It's a spiritual home. We don't want to push the capacity past 60, 65. So let's just bite the bullet and get it done.
Interesting. Lots of talk about this in the chat tonight, Stu. Give us your thoughts on it. I mean, I think me and Mitch are pretty much agreed. I think, I definitely think we could sell 75, 80,000 tickets for certain games, but I think it would be a push to sell it out week after week.
I think to make sure it's nigh on capacity every week, any stadium, whether it's redeveloped St James's or a new stadium, I think the capacity should be increased by 10 to 15,000 maximum. And that would make it comfortably the second biggest ground in the UK league-wise. And that is enough. You've got to look at the conurbation of Tyneside and things like that. And yes, there'll be tourists, but there'll be enough for everyone to get in. I think romantically and ideally, an expanded St James's Park works for everyone and it keeps ticking the boxes. If you remember the white horses, the owners come charging in on and said, we're here for you. We're just custodians of the club. But ultimately, you've got to take a step to one side and think, and I know I've said this on so many occasions, they're in it to make money. And eventually, the appeasement of the fans will be pushed to one side by what is economically necessary. Now, I think we joked about the St James's like Trigger's brush, isn't it? It's had that many different transformations, but it's still St James's, and I get it. And it's still the ground that we all took our first steps in, and it has all of that nostalgia, but doesn't mean that we couldn't create new memories. The thing that you both said is the key would be the location, and the obvious and what should be the only answer would be the Leazes Park. So it's still got the links. You can still have a Leazes end. You can still have a Gallagher end. And you mentioned Juventus with the Lions Arena. You've got the Emirates Stadium, Bayern Munich got Alliance Arena. Why couldn't we then have Aramco Arena at St James's Park? And that would again create more money. I just used Aramco as an example. It was the first thing that came to my head. But I think it's something that I'm sure we said this only in the most recent weeks, was sometimes you can create a problem to then find a solution. It's like with the ticketing issues and with the fact that people can't get in and people are still seeing empty seats and the so-called tourists are getting tickets or getting priorities. The fans advisory board, where if it goes wrong, they'll just blame them. We spoke to them, we consulted with them, and they thought it was great. So there's so many things that, to me, I think have been put in place to change the narrative. And because it came out last week that Man United want the taxpayer, or suggested the taxpayers should be paying for their Wembley of the North. I don't think we want a Wembley of the North. I don't think the Saudis are into copying anyone. They want to create their own footprint and maybe create not just a stadium, but they want it to be like a beacon of the North. And if they had their way, they would get a fantastic state-of-the-art, probably the best league stadium in the world, and they would build it. But the knock-on effect that would be huge. With positively, we would need a bigger airport. But then you have the NIMBYs that you referred to earlier. Steve said, "No, you can't build there." Why? Because it will create thousands of more jobs. We could then become a hub for transatlantic flights. Yeah, Newcastle has a lot of history, as Northumbria does have. Even that J.K. Rowling writing about Harry Potter, it would make Newcastle and the Northeast a lot more accessible, and then that attracts the top pop stars or music acts to come and play at the stadium. And all of a sudden, St James's Park or whatever the stadium is going to be called, but our city will become famous worldwide for even more right reasons. And all the time we're getting the benefit locally, economically, with more people getting jobs. they're making more money from it, and that's why they bought us in the first place. And the extra money they make, they'll put back into making the team better. And that's basically why we're asking this question. It's about making sure the team is financially self-sustainable and not relying on handouts all the time, because they could hand out to us for the rest of their lives, but they didn't buy us for that. So it will make us self-sufficient. And if that's for the betterment of Newcastle United, then I think everyone needs to take a long, hard think rather than just a knee-jerk reaction to it. No, I'm not moving. We've won nothing at St. James's Park for 55 years or something. So the idea of potentially being able to generate more money, which means we can compete with these, then we can be more savvy off the field. And believe me, the Saudi businessmen are as savvy as you'll get. So I suspect that there will be movement on that front. And if it is a mover, hopefully it'll be it won't just be for the sake of it. And I promise you they will deliver a stadium that we can all be proud of. And that's something we've got to bear in mind as well.
Okay, we are halfway through the show, and as always, it is time for the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Go to their website, skipsandbins.com, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, or telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Go to their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. Go to their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email info@unitedgrouptravel.com, or phone 01670 632 460, or mobile 0791 666 4174. They're a local company from Morpeth, and there are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And if you want to subscribe to the channel, hit the subscribe button under the video. Click the thumb up to like the video, and click share to share to your social media. If you want to help the channel financially, you can pay a one-off £25 fee. You get a cup, a scarf, a pen, and a membership card, and entry into the NUFC Matters monthly draw. Email john@nufcmatters.com for more details, or if you've got a smartphone, scan the QR code now, and it takes you straight to the membership pack. We also support the food bank on this channel. Go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and you'll find the matchday bucket. You can make a donation virtually today. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. We also do events during the year. NUFC Matters Live will be at the O2 City Hall on Friday, the 2nd of August, for an evening with Rob Lee, one night in Antwerp. Tickets start at £15, and you can get them from ticketmaster.co.uk. An evening with the entertainers takes place on Friday, the 24th of January 2025 at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House in Newcastle. Telephone 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk to buy tickets today. You can also catch me on the North East Footy Breakfast Show live on Toon Radio weekdays 7 till 9 a.m. on DAB, smart speakers, and the toonuk.com. And we have got the end of season party, 20th of July, with Super Matt and Gibbo. George is going to do an Ask George, and local band Stannington performing. £10 a ticket, 5 o'clock till late. Tickets available at nufcmatters.com or newcastlelegends.com. And we've also added an evening with Peter Beardsley on the 2nd of June. Tickets are available on newcastlelegends.com only. And I've stuck the link in for the latest auction. Seemed to be very popular last week. I've got a few items which we are sticking out each week, including these little beauties: Pavel Cernacek print, Kevin Keegan signed print, and a Gaza Tears in Turin print. So if you want to join the auction, they're all easily priced. To get yourself on there. It runs for the next 8 days. I'll stick the link back in the chat now. Okay, lots of comments coming in about the stadium. Kenny says, new stadium, good, but we don't want one like the foreign ones, 20 miles out the city and no transport. Tom says he could build a new stadium up the race course. C. Anderson says, definitely move to a new stadium. Nostalgia is wonderful, but we need to change and move with the times. or we will go backwards. Lots of people suggesting the land next to the arena, which I already believe is being sold. Sam says, why is Gallagher extension being written off? London has the underground sewage, rivers and streams, but architects still find a way around it. Not so sure it has been. Obviously, they're building the stack on there where the metro, etc. is. So, potentially that will still go ahead. You could still build over the top of that. Steve says it's about making new history. I'm fed up with listening to we won the cup in 55. Get it done. And West Ham can hold 80,000. Just design it so seats can be added or hidden as required, so there is no empty seats. And Danny says, if they do build a new stadium, I'd like one of the stands named after Sir Bobby. Let's get it built. Let's get it built first, but I understand the sentiment. David says, for me, it's inevitable we move to Leazes Park, but the stadium would not be ready for at least 3 years. Then we'll have a very, very good team to fill it. And Kenny again says, to be honest, not many people around with memories of golden days. Yeah, you're probably right. Mozart, good to see you. Leazes is ideal. We retain the history, cathedral on the hill, etc. And we can still get the 62, 63 home, of course. Just think of the buses, of course. And Derek says, what are the fans stay at St James's and stay middle of the table fighting relegation or a new stadium and win trophies? If only it was as simple as that. We will have to wait and see what happens over the course of the next few weeks. Well, I think there may well be an announcement before the end of the season anyway.
Steve, before we move on, just to add to all of that, when I mentioned there that it's something that's obviously been discussed at the top level, they're getting their job done. The fact that we're discussing it on here, and you've seen the comments, so people are becoming more accustomed to the idea. So it's slowly winning people over, because I think when the takeover first came in, when it first happened, if they just said, right, we're here now, and the first thing we're going to do is build a new stadium, it would have caused a lot of resentment. But because of, I think a lot of fans are taking a more logical look at it rather than an emotional look at it, and thinking, do you know what, I can understand why it would get done, and are warming to the idea rather than being totally against it and not really knowing why they're against it. Because you've got the discussions about atmosphere and stuff like that, and okay, let's make the Gallagher like the yellow wall in Dortmund. Well, then you'll have people that you're not moving me out of my seat, and it causes discontent. So if they create a new stadium, you can have your corporate areas, you can have your singing areas, you can have seats where you can get back together with your mates that you've been split up from because of the way the tickets, season tickets and match going tickets have been handled. And that in itself would create a better atmosphere. And as I said just before, there would have a stadium we'd be proud of. So maybe I've been brainwashed into thinking it's a good idea. But I think for the betterment of Newcastle United, it is inevitable, and I really hope that they are able to do it, because there'll be so many people that will benefit from it. Not just in Newcastle, there'll be people in the surrounding areas. Dare I say it, Sunderland, Durham, Northumberland, they'll benefit from it as well. And so it's to me it's something that is just a case of when, not if.
Okay, moving on. Stephen Kennedy says, do the lads have any idea how the club can get the better of FFP? Because it seems to me like we're taking 2 steps forward then having to take 1 step back. At this rate, poor Gibbo, I've got to finish that, will go into suspended animation to be around when we win something and catch up with the other 6 Pirates. Good analogy there. But yeah, I mean, keep doing what we're doing, Mitch, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's going to take a while to catch up.
It is going to take a while to catch up. I think, again, let's see what kind of reset happens in the summer to enable a few things. I genuinely think there's something coming that's a surprise for everyone. Because there's got to be ways around it. There inevitably is always ways around things, legally and properly. We've got so much opportunity to add sponsorships left, right and centre, and that'll all come in, or some of that will come in and leave opportunities for more to come. We've got to try and keep pushing the envelope, because I think we are getting to a point where if anyone looked at what's happened to Everton and say, oh, sod it, let's take a points deduction, I wouldn't blame them. But I think they would take a very different view if it was quite obvious that somebody just run a coach and horse through it all and said F you to everybody. The Everton situation was complicated by the fact that the Premier League didn't have the balls to back up what their own rules said. They had to put it through an independent commission. The minute that happened, there was always going to be some sort of compromise. They tried very hard to get rid of the problem and give Everton concessions that they gave to no other club in that period, of the size that they gave no other club in that period. But I just think seeing effort and running a coaching horses through it isn't the way to do it. I think let's see what happens with the current crop of clubs which have been accused of a breach again. Let's see going forward what happens to Chelsea, because they're going to be in. I gather they have to clear 100 million in profit to get anywhere near the numbers. That's not 100 million in sales, because they've still got somebody like Lukaku on their books, who, if they sell him, it'll be at a loss, and that'll affect, his book value is such that no matter what they sell him for, you'll make a loss on him.
I think his break
affects
38 million, Mitch.
I
think his break even figures 38 million.
Yeah, they're not going to for him.
Not now.
Not now. No. And so you're going to find a situation. I'm going to be curious to see what happens with them next. Now, if they get let off, and if any punishment sent their way seem to be lenient, then somebody might turn around and say, "Oh, Sundays, it's nonsense playing the game." But I think while things are as they are, we will want to be seen to have done things by the book and up front and properly. And so I think more of the same. I do think the leaning on FFP over January was, now in hindsight, we see what's subsequently happened. I think there's been more going on, and I think it's been a useful little statement to hide behind. And so I think going forward, I would like to see in this summer, I think we're going to have a reset on and off the pitch in many ways, and that'll ease the FFP situation significantly.
Stu, would you agree with what Mitch says there?
I normally do, to be fair. And the one thing that we've both been very consistent on is the PIF will always want to be seen to do things the right way, but they won't let themselves get pushed around too much. And this is why I think they're sitting back waiting for, and now seeing other clubs question and verbally challenging the rules we're set in place. And they can then join forces with others rather than lead the charge. So they're not seen as the troublemakers. They could be seen as the one that helps other people, the other clubs, They could be the one that's the voice off your Evertons, off your Palaces, off your Forests, off your Aston Villas, and even some of the cartel, as we've just discussed there, Chelsea. They're in real trouble. If not by the end of June, they haven't sold a lot of players. So there's so much that needs to be changed, and I'm quite certain that Newcastle United don't want to be seen as the architects of the one that forced the change. They'll be happy to be part of it because they'll benefit the most from it. But to be the ones that are like the anarchists that go against the establishment, it doesn't suit the narrative that they're trying to build. So I'm sure that they'll join in, and the longer it goes on, the PL, the Premier League will have to make changes anyway, because you look at what happened in January with the transfer window. It was a massive non-event, which reflects badly on their brand. So they're open, it's weekend, but without look like they're backing down. But the Premier League have to remember they're there to represent the clubs, the 20 clubs, not represent 3 or 4 of them. And it's becoming more and more apparent that it's the 3 red teams, the Liverpool, Man United and Arsenal, the ones that are trying to keep the status quo, and Tottenham are hanging on the coattails of that because of everyone else on revenue generated. But look at their debt. That's where the false economy lies. And the one thing that really frustrates me is if you can prove you can spend the money, Yes, you have to be careful. I listened to something Simon Jordan said through the week, and he made perfect sense. It might suit the owner at the moment. I think he was talking about Nottingham Forest, if I recall right. It might suit the owner at the moment, but what happens if his other businesses run into trouble? The first thing he's going to get rid of is the football club. So I think I've made a suggestion previously where you could have something like an escrow account where you have to put money into it, which would then allow the club to survive on wages, etc., for a certain period of time, whether that be 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons. Once you've done that, that blows out the water. The argument that they use for financial fair play is to look after the club. And if the owner has the willingness to do that, then they should be able to spend what they want. And again, we would be the major benefit from that. That then sorts out the English Premier League. The problem it then creates is the UEFA rules. But that's a fight for another day, because without the English teams in European competitions, it's not really a European competition, because if they weren't relying on the revenue created from the TV companies, etc., from the UK, they would have broke away and created their own little league anyway. So that's why it still hasn't happened, because they can't do it. It would be not meaningless, or worthless, but it would be tarnished with it. It's not really a proper European league without the clubs that are competing from England. So there's a lot to go through, but it's at the stage, same as with the stadium, is getting talked about more and more often. So the ones in power will have to be seen to be doing something sooner rather than later.
Okay, Barry's taking us back to football. He says, panel, how much of an improvement was adding Willock's pace to the team? It's been massive, hasn't it? I mean, he's been such a big miss. You know, when you think about the players who've been without for long periods of time, Joe Linton, of course, Nick Pope and Willock, 3 key players, Mitch. And it's that old adage, isn't it? You don't really miss what you've got until it's gone.
And not just pace, his movement, his positioning. He's an intelligent footballer. And when you get an intelligent footballer like that playing with another intelligent footballer like Bruno, it creates trouble for an opposition, because they're dealing with one, and then they've got a second one to deal with. And it's not just his pace. There's a lot more to Joe Willock's game than that. He takes up really clever positions. He has this ability to drift off of a marker and lose his marker. And again, you look at that header, which was scrambled away off the line. How on earth did he pop in the middle of the box unmarked, basically? And that's what he can do. And that's not just his pace. There's more to him than pace. Very, very intelligent footballer. Comes across as a really lovely young man as well. You know, and I think as a person, they're the ones you want in your team and in your squad. And delighted to have him back. And what a difference he made.
Yeah, it's good player to have back, and I mean, he's only going to get better, Stu.
It's not, yeah, exactly right. He will get better, because he's just finding his feet again. And it's not just the fact that he's got pace, which highlighted the lack of mobility that we've suffered for the last few months. It's his willingness to use it. You know, it's his willingness to track back and help and understand his role and execute his role. And you think you've got that on one side of Bruno, and now if you can imagine on the other side, you've got a fit, raring to go English-speaking Tonali. This, that's a midfield is a force to be reckoned with, isn't it? And then depend on the opposition, you can add Joe Linton to it. You can add a number 6 to it. You can add a number 10 to it. You've got Maidi, who will only get better. Anderson's only going to get better. And then you've got a crux of a 6-7 strong midfield that, for me, will be a rival to every midfield out there if they played in the right games, in the right positions, and it would still have enough quality there if there was 2 or 3 injuries. Hopefully no more betting suspensions, but if there was 2 or 3 injuries, we still have enough quality to be able to compete and still have quality coming off the bench. We've seen how Willock and Joe Linton combined so effectively last season. But would that happen now this season, because you've got Gordon playing there? But Gordon can play on the right and be just as effective, because he's right-footed, so he can get to byline and get the ball over, but he's able to use his left foot, as you've seen when he's crossing with his left foot, so he can still cut in. Harvey Barnes, I think, will have a strong finish to the season. I think as his fitness grows, his understanding of what's expected to be a starter in this team in positional sense and everything else, and get the best out of him. He's only going to get better. And I think we'll finish the season with Barnes, Isaac, and Willock. Sorry, Barnes, Isaac, and Gordon as the front three, providing they all stay fit. But because people are coming back now, we don't have the injuries as excuses, as we've been able to give and readily been able to give. Now we've got a squad that is on the up, and a lot of them, for a lot of them, their season's really just starting, where other people are tiring. So that's why I referred to it earlier. Yesterday's win could be a sliding doors moment for us. We've just jumped on the springboard, so let's see what the bounce is, and hopefully we carry on in an ascendancy that's going to elevate us up to the league and make sure we qualify for Europe. And of course, in a couple of weeks' time, when we've beat Man City, we then get Wolves in the semi-final, and then we get to Wembley and we beat Klopp in his last game for Liverpool. That's my ideal end to the season.
David says they'll need hotels to accommodate our Middle Eastern friends when they pop over for matches. The transport infrastructure will have to be accessed
exactly
with new stadium developments. And somebody put something in earlier on as well about we need a bigger airport, which, we're going to need all of that if we get, or when we get a bigger stadium.
There's already talks underway, I understand, with Saudi Air about looking at how we can help them in terms of being a European hub. The runway would need to be extended, and that would be a way to keep Emirates happy. You could even turn around to Emirates and say, right, you can start flying one of your big birds, one of your 360s into Newcastle now, and you've got an opportunity to sell more tickets into what is a busy Emirates airport. But I mean, obviously, that doing any deal with Saudi would need to be balanced delicately with Emirates to keep them happy too. But that's not an impossible deal to broker. It's not like you would be asking Emirates to play with Qatar Airways, because I don't think that would happen. No. But I think with Saudi Air, I think that's a different beast. You could even potentially see a second terminal.
That's what I was referring to. It wouldn't just be a bigger runway; it would be an expansion of the airport.
Yeah, and absolutely.
These sort of things need to be built. And one thing we do have in the Northeast, and this is why I said it's not just Newcastle that we benefited. We've got a highly skilled, hard-working workforce who,
yes,
if it's a 3 or 4 year project, they're all going to get good money for that period. And then once that, you get the knock-on effects, as someone mentioned there, with the hotels, and then possibly a modern metro centre becomes. All of these things get created, and the snowball effect happens. So. And ultimately, that's why I refer to our stadium on Leazes Park would be the beacon of the north. Something that shines really bright, something for we're all to be proud of. But as an area, we all benefit from, and you've got to start thinking big, because if you just keep thinking the same thing, you're going to get the same thing. Sometimes you've got to get better to get bigger.
You're absolutely right, mate. I would say to anybody who's involved in any of these discussions about projects, don't just look at yourself. Don't just look at your piece of the puzzle. Look at the bigger picture and how you fit into that. Because the advantages and the benefits of being part of that bigger picture are legion to everybody, and not just to those involved in doing the deals, but to those who may be looking for a job, for those who would come into workforce new with new opportunities for the region as a whole. And I think that's how these negotiations should be viewed as not just a single cog, but a part of a machine, and a machine that, once it's functional, will benefit everybody.
I think there are NIMBY issues with airport expansion. Know someone who lives there, says Mozza. Lee, good evening, says rename the airport. For example, sponsorship with the club. It's all about patiently trusting the process, and at the end, how will have us flying. Just getting back to football issues. And Anderson says, not sure why Tonali will be under that much pressure. It will soon dissipate with a good game or two. Talking about players, Minty back on the score sheet again today, Mitch. He scored another goal in a 2-2 draw at PSV. Kev also said Minty scored again against league leaders. Think this lad has huge potential. Certainly doing a hell of a lot more than Garen Kowal did on his loan spell, isn't he, Mitch?
And Kowal's still in. Colin, isn't he? Is it Volendam?
Yeah.
And he's not getting a regular start there. So yeah, Minty seems to be doing well. And that's what we want for a player out on loan somewhere like Feyenoord. You want to see them grow, develop, and show what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
The Premier League on a regular basis is the next step up from that. But that's all you can ask of a player that you've got out on loan is right. Show us some form, show you what we can do at this level. Get some experience. He's had experience in Champions League games. That's a cracking loan, that, for him. He's going to come back to Newcastle United with kind of footballing experience that money can't buy in some ways. So, does that then automatically translate into the squad next season? Not necessarily. But I think it'll certainly make Eddie take notice of him though, when he comes back into the setup with that kind of season on his CV out on loan. It can only be good for the player, and then ultimately good for us.
Yeah. Mitch, I think as well, it's one area which could save us a lot of money before I go to Stu. It's another area which we need strengthening in. But yeah, Dutch League's not the same as the Premier League, but that's, it could take a massive amount of pressure off us if we've signed somebody for peanuts who can score goals in the Premier League. And there's no doubt that he's capable of scoring goals. It's just whether he can take that step into the Premier League, isn't it?
Well, it's if he could turn around and be something like Bob at City.
Yeah, exactly.
It's suddenly we're not looking for 30, 40 million to sign a player. We've got somebody we can bring off the bench and have impact from day one.
Yeah. Mindy is an exciting prospect, Stu.
Yeah, I keep smiling every time we hear about that Oscar Bob. I just think if it's a Star Wars character, isn't it?
Yeah, he does sound like it, doesn't he?
Yeah, but with Minty, for us, we're now in a win-win position. I think it's been a brilliant loan for him, and I'm quite sure they'll bring him back in the summer and have a look at him in the pre-season, and then decide will he benefit his development benefit more from another loan move, just to get stronger, more aware, etc., and then bring him back. But then you've got the thing: if they're good enough, they're old enough. Lewis Smiley's the classic example. Well, one thing's for certain: whether he cuts the mustard in the Premier League or not, the money that we paid for him would have quadrupled at least by the time we're looking to sell him. Which again, if the financial fair play or the PSO is still in play in whichever version, that would benefit Newcastle as well. So that's one thing we can praise Dan Ashworth for, his ability, and we've talked about this, his ability to find raw talent, bring them on and sell them at a higher price. What was questionable regarding Mr. Ashworth was he able to convince already made good footballers to come to the club that he was representing. So that's why I think someone like Minty, he could be a super sub, bring on the last 10 minutes if we need a goal, and he's something different, isn't he? I just don't think from the bits I've seen of him, he'd be capable of doing a full season in a regular position. So then you've got to think if he's going to be on the bench or sometimes not even in the match day squad, because I'm sure we're going to bolster the squad through the summer, would he be more beneficial to him and to us to go out on loan again? And I'm quite sure that Feyenoord will welcome back with open arms the season he's had. He's had a bit of a lull, but he showed good strength of character, and he's coming out with it now and starting to rip defences apart. So that's why I claimed or stated it was going to be a win-win for us. We'll either have a player that's going to save us tens of millions or a player that will make us a good few million profit, which would allow us to spend the tens of millions in anyway. So keep it up, Mr. Minty.
Yep, need to get Yankuba on the weight so we can have an extra strong Minty, says Mark.
Hey.
Daniel says, do you think there's anything in the rumours Ashworth was stalling the Joe Linton deal for Manchester United? It sounds a bit far-fetched, says Daniel. Mitch?
I've heard that. Is it far-fetched? Don't know. Is it coincidence that after Ashworth goes on gardening leave, all of a sudden Joe Linton's agents in the region and Joe Linton's pictured in the dressing room after the match yesterday looking very happy and cuddling his mates? Don't know. I'm not usually one for conspiracy theories. But with the Ashworth thing, something's not been right for a long time. It's been, I think you use a polite word, dysfunctional. And so, would he deliberately go out of his way to do something? I don't think anybody would be that stupid. That said, if it's true that he's been for a coffee with Potter, what I'd like to see come out of that is either they turn around to the newspapers reporting that and say that's untrue and we need that reversed, or somebody may have a legal case to answer on his gardening leave. Either way, it's quite embarrassing. And so, in the world of football, nothing would surprise me in terms of skullduggery, backstabbing, and self-interest. Nothing would surprise me anymore. Do I think that's what's a deliberate move? I'd like to think not. I'd like to think there's still a degree of decency in recognising contracts and recognising behaviour that still is in place somewhere in the higher echelons of football. But nothing would surprise me anymore.
Stu?
Do you know what? Of all the signings that we've had over the last 5 years, those two Brazilian lads have taken to the region more than anyone else I can think of. You know, they love Newcastle, they love living here, they love playing for the club. And even if Ashworth, I don't think he's tapped up to go to Man United, because I think Joe Linton's of the same sort of mind that would say, why would I want to go there? I'll stay here. But he could be dangled the carrot for money. But I can see that Ashworth may have put on the back burner the contract talks because he had other things more pressing on his mind, or there was other things more pressing at the club before Joe Linton's transfer talks. But again, remember, Ashworth's never commented on into this publicly. It was Eddie Howe that said about his contract. So that could have been to put pressure on, but it was warming and reassuring to see Joe Linton greeting the players back in after yesterday's game. And you can see he was genuinely happy, and he is part of the team, he is part of the squad, and I'm extremely confident he will get a new contract. And I think sometimes you get a bit of misinformation on what people are asking for. You know, I don't think he seems to be quite modest, Joe Linton. He knows his worth, and there's nothing wrong with wanting more if you are one of the 4 or 5 people that we wouldn't want to get rid of. And he's getting to the age where his next long-term contract will be his last big one. So you can understand him wanting more money. But I think the way the balance sheet looks at Newcastle, do we pay him the money we get from releasing Hendrick, add that on so we keep a happy Joe Linton, or do we lose Hendrick and Joe Linton and have to spend 60, 70 million on a midfielder to replace him? So there's common sense sometimes isn't common, but you've got to be practical with it. It's easy now to get in there. Let's blame Dan Ashworth for everything because of his conduct over the last month or so, possibly longer. But Joe Linton is always gave the impression that Newcastle United and Newcastle as a city is very much in his heart. And I think if he got anywhere close to what his agent's asking for, he'll tell his agent, I'm staying here, I'm taking that. Move on.
Given his size and strength and ability, Joe Linton would be very hard to replace, like for like. Got to hang on to him, in my opinion. I wouldn't be surprised. Tim says, get Big Joe tied up ASAP. Very hard player to replace Big Joe, says Derek. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something sooner rather than later on that. There's been a lot of helicopter activity across the Tyne this week. It certainly looked like a helicopter which would be used by the football club, let's say. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's been people in and out trying to get that over the line. And Eddie Howe in his press conference saying that Amanda, Mia Dad, and Darren Eales were now dealing with that. It would be a win-win, wouldn't it, if they sorted that contract out? And
wouldn't it be two fingers up as well to Ashworth and Sorg and all the bad publicity they give to say, look, he's on gardening leave. We've sorted his contract out. And then, you know, you've got Joe Linton holding the shirts and having a speech saying he's delighted to stay here for the next 4 or 5 years. And that will give so much positivity about the club and the feel-good factor's back. And that's how fickle we are as fans. We can get depressed with the slightest bit of news that probably isn't true. But then when we get proper news, we get elated with it as well. So for me, you're right, Steve. I think we could be seeing an announcement with Joe Linton imminently.
And there's an international break on the horizon, which is when Newcastle like to announce things. They like to keep people busy during the international break on the media side. So maybe it's all being headed towards, you know, that little period when, you know, keeping it on the back burner, maybe, you know, until, you know, till then. But we'll wait and see. Just a quick one on Mark Knopfler and the new local hero, Mitch. Did you get a chance to hear it in amongst all the noise at the Dubai Mags yesterday? And if you did, what did you think of it?
No, I didn't, because we've got a playlist that we put on ahead of the game that's got local hero and the music that come out to, and we have our own flags going here. So I haven't heard the new version yet. It's for a very good cause, so certainly want to get behind it. If we end up using that instead of the original, happy days. It's still the same, still our tune. It's going to something that's very important. I think all post-COVID, all charities need as much help as they can get, and something that's close to obviously Mark Knopfler's heart as well, for him to get involved with that. You can't knock back that at all. So yeah, but I haven't had a chance to hear it of what we were doing yesterday. We shared the videos. I think you've got them up on shorts on YouTube, haven't you? The pretty much stuff. It was also, while I'm on about Dubai, good to have some more tourists over, some guys who came over for the week and wanted to come and watch the game. Anybody is over and they want to know where we are, just get in touch with us. Easiest is through Twitter, and we'll always make you welcome, and there's usually a good welcome on my table for anybody who's new in Dubai and wants to get in touch with the atmosphere out here. We had close to another 100 out yesterday. The 3 o'clock stroke 7 o'clock for us kickoff games are always the best attended, and we had a good day and a good result and a good turnout and some new faces, which is always lovely to see.
Maybe worth getting you and your friend on maybe Saturday next week, mate. Will there be no match on?
Oh yeah, I'll have a word with Julie. Let's see if we can get one.
See if she can do. See if she can do maybe 9 in the morning, because I know I've got something on I'm quite busy next Saturday, despite there being no match on. But if she can do 9 o'clock, would be great to get the Dubai Mags views. And you know, I know you said you were going to get somebody on, so maybe do that, Mitch, and we'll see if we can do it for Saturday morning.
No worries. Let's see what we can sort out.
Stu, have you had time to listen to it?
It's 9. I'll be at brunch at the 1 o'clock Dubai time next week.
Oh, well, there you go.
Afterwards.
Yeah, Stu, have you had time to hear it?
Have to pay the bills, mate. Some of us have to pay the bills.
I've heard it, and it's like all football fans, we're all football experts and cynics and critics, etc. The same comes to music as well, and very quickly it's easy to say no, the original is the best, and in most cases the original songs are the best. And that's why if there weren't very good original songs, they wouldn't be copied, would they? So you have to take that into consideration. But you said it there, Steve, the reason it was done for is for charity, and we shouldn't get away from that. And if it means, I think, is it a £5 they're asking for?
Yeah.
And you start thinking of how many happy memories that song has given us over the years supporting Newcastle United and what it means to us. We'll talk about the nostalgia of the stadium and things like that. Then, if all the money goes to charity, then it's a 5 hours spent. And of course, if you just released the same song, it would be like, oh, well, that's cheap. So he's obviously put a lot of work into tweaking it, shall we say. Does it sound as good as the first one? No, not yet. But it could be like the angel of the north that grows on you. But he's doing it for charity, so we should get behind it.
Yeah. And that is 90 minutes done and dusted. The professionals over for another week. I'm back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, with the fans forum. Until then, have a good night. Take care. See you soon. See you, lads.
Fun. Have a pleasant evening.
Cheers, everyone.